Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. I've been a little sick, so I was planning on going live last week, but I'm going to push that off a little bit. But I wanted to give you guys some answers to your questions from last week. So here we go. And I'll do my best to answer them succinctly. And all right, so this one is for Terry. Terry, I've learned some skills to deal with things in the moment, but they are hard to remember to use them in the moment of anxiety. Any suggestions? Yes. So what I would always recommend is to come back to your breathing. And that is linked to the sympathetic nervous system. When anxiety gets triggered, our nervous system goes into fight flight, and that has a certain kind of response to it, right? Heart rate goes up, breathing gets tight, there's tension, we're getting mobilized for action. So it's really important to notice the physical sensation of anxiety itself. And when you do notice that, just start bringing your attention to your breath. So what happens a lot of times is that we start letting the mind go a little nuts, and it goes into the spiral of anxiety of what if this, what if that, and it's like the sympathetic nervous system in our fight, flight, freeze system goes a little on hyper alert. And we have to then just calm it down. And the best way to calm that down is simply to breathe. Now, that's not going to feel super comfortable at first. So I remember when I was going through this, especially before presentations, I would get anxious. And then when I first started just allowing the anxiety to be there and not making that into another kind of threat in my experience, that it took quite a while and quite a number of times for me to actually start to calm down and for that to be less of a trigger. So even if that doesn't work right away, just keep at it. Bring your attention to your breathing. Don't try to fight the anxiety. And then eventually that'll start to subside and it'll signal to your body that anxiety itself is not something to be afraid of. Okay, hope that helped. All right, so Joanna piggybacked on Terry's question, how to recenter when in the midst of a storm. How do you resolve conflict without feeling awkward and embarrassed by your anxiety? It's almost like feeling anxiety for your anxiety you exhibited. Okay, so that takes a little bit of extra, let's just say, development and extra understanding of anxiety. So when we talk about the shift from being anxious into, and this is the key, is transforming that into more and more self-acceptance or fuller and fuller self-acceptance. So, what do I mean by that? I mean that anxiety, if you really look at and feel into the essence of it, it is a not okayness with how you are in the moment. And so what happens? We criticize ourselves, we judge what has happened or how we behaved and how we acted. And a lot of that was based on our history. So the more that you know about your history and the more that you bring that into your conscious thought, the better that you'll be able to handle these situations with anxiety. But what I would say is let's just first accept anxiety for what it is. So first we have to unpack all of our judgments about anxiety. So, oh, it sucks. I shouldn't be anxious. It causes me so much trouble. It holds me back so much. I wish I didn't have it. So all of those are, in a way, an orientation toward rejecting anxiety. And if we are able, though, to shift that and to actually start turning toward it and accepting anxiety just without any sort of judgment. It is what it is. I'm feeling tense right now. I'm feeling stressed. There's a lot of stuff going on in my head. My stomach might feel like there's butterflies. Let's just hang out with it. And I know that is so counterintuitive. But when I first started to accept anxiety. It was like my life completely changed. And I remember the first time that I heard this was from one of my teachers, and I was on the phone with her in the airport, and I was stressed or anxious about something, and she was just talking me through it, and she said, "Why don't you just let anxiety be there? There's nothing wrong with it." And that was such a different way for me to think about anxiety. And it was so freeing. So I really encourage that for all of you is to start to just get comfortable with anxiety itself. Okay. Um, let's see, there's a second part of this question of how to recenter when you're in the storm. So again, this is the first thing that we always do is bring our attention back to your breathing. And in a way, what we're trying to do there is bring ourselves back to being grounded in the present moment, in our physical bodies, because a lot of anxiety is all about projecting or anticipating or overlaying our fear of something in the future, what's going to happen, how are people perceiving me? So there's a lot of unknown. So we want to bring our experience back to what we know. All right, we know that we're in our bodies, we know that we're sitting on the ground, feet on the floor, any way that you can bring yourself back to the present moment into the physical realm, that's going to help you recenter. Okay, Joanne, I hope that helps, and feel free to send me some follow-up questions if you need clarification. Okay, so Terry has an extra follow-up question. I also seem to be anxious without knowing it. I guess I'm so used to this state. I have high anxiety, and this happens to a lot of people. So the way that I look at anxiety is that we don't hit these high peaks of anxiety or panic right away. What usually happens is that we have signals that we're anxious in terms of physical sensations. So sweaty palms, tension in the jaw, maybe a clenching in the belly, shoulders tightening. So whatever it is for you, that usually starts fairly small and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And what happens is that we don't pay attention to those bigger and bigger and bigger. We only pay attention to it when we're up here, high anxiety, super amplified, that we're sort of haywire by the time that we get to the point where we're really recognizing it. And this is where mindfulness is so, so important. And I always think of mindfulness, and I'm a certified mindfulness teacher through Google's program. And one thing that really struck me was that they always said that mindfulness is mental training for focus and for the mind, really, right? So it's just like building muscle, but we're building our neurology and building these different neurons that need to fire. But what's great about developing more and more self-awareness and mindfulness is that we catch anxiety way earlier on the curve, so that instead of being aware of it up here, we're aware of it way earlier, and then it's much more manageable to address it and understand it and be with it when it's like a level 3 versus a level 10. So that just takes practice. Again, the foundation here is accepting the anxiety, because what if you reject the anxiety, if you avoid it, if you run away from it, then we don't have the opportunity to actually see that ramp up period. Okay. Hope that helps, Terry.